Everyone, welcome back to the Full Circle podcast. Today I'm joined with special guest Samuel Kumar. Me and Sam have been good friends for a while. Went to University John Moores together, and Sam is now currently a Part 1 architectural assistant at Scott Brownrigg. So welcome, Sam.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Hi everyone.
Yeah, so how are you
Yeah,
doing today, Sam? You good?
yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm chill. It's nice to have a weekend off. I've been quite busy. Uh, yeah, so it's like, yeah, nice to take a few days out and chill. Nice to do different stuff as well. So like doing a
Good,
podcast and
good.
stuff. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So then obviously we've known each other for a while. So how would you, have you got any sort of ideas for people who want to, looking at going to university and, you know, I think me and you had quite similar experiences in uni from doing both foundation year to going straight into university. Do you think your foundation year impacted uni that much?
Well, so I think in general, I think foundation years are a good idea. I think they really give you that great introduction of here's a project to run. What are your thoughts? How do you want to take this forward? How do you develop your ideas on your own? And I think that's quite a different experience from A levels, certainly where you're spoon fed. Um,
Hmm.
the course. Um, my experience was a little lacking. I think I didn't really do anything for a whole year. My foundation was kind of yeah, the college wasn't very good, but it gave me that stepping stone to get into university. So actually, it
Hmm.
was really good. I think I did product design for A level, and so
Yep.
in that project, we were told to kind of design a table and come up with it. And I was kind of like, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do this PC desk where the PC is built into the desk. So I guess I was quite fortunate in that I was already running my own project at A level, which perhaps is
Yeah, that you
why,
could piggyback off of.
yeah, exactly, yeah, perhaps that might be why foundation wasn't that um, significant to me. But I think just in principle, you know, running your own project and
Hmm.
knowing how to do it before university is quite an essential step.
Yeah, I always think the start to university was a bit weird in a way because our first sort of introduction to architecture was building sandcastles on what was that beach called that we
Crosby
went to?
Beach,
Yeah,
Crosby
Crosby
Beach,
Beach.
yeah,
So we went on a train journey, didn't we, to Crosby Beach?
yeah,
Built some sandcastles, and then it was just me, Sam, Emily, and Josh all sitting at the end of the day in a cafe, who then turned out to be our housemates, which is a bit of a crazy story, isn't it?
yeah,
But yeah, it's really interesting how, I mean, for me, foundation was a big impact. I felt, I think it made me a lot more independent because obviously I went to uni to do. No, I went to college first, did my A levels, did maths, computer science, and graphic design, and then I failed maths and computer science, did my graphics, and then ended up on foundation art. So, and here I am.
yeah.
But
I think
I,
it goes to show that there isn't one single route. It's whether you're, high school, sixth form, university, and you as soon as you're 18, you leave and you go straight to university. That's not the case.
hmm,
And I think, especially now when we have sort of apprenticeships in architecture and different avenues to becoming an architect, I think people should be aware that if you're thinking about doing architecture at university, um, there is more than one way to get there, and I think that's really important to know.
yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, and
Do you
being
think?
yeah, go on.
Do you think that say, because I always think back to our first review, do you think that had much of an impact on you, say, coming from foundation year two? Because I mean, obviously it's new for everyone, but do you think that having a foundation year gave you that foundation to maybe do better in the review? Do you think you're more apt to it?
Um, I remember my first review. It was the anatomy of buildings. So
Yeah.
we were studying. We were each given houses in groups, and we had to kind of study it through sections and plans, elevations. It was just the fundamentals of okay, why has the architect made these decisions?
Yeah.
And I got to the review, and I was shitting myself. I was just Yeah, I remember just feeling, I was just stressed, and I stood up. I was the first one to go, and I just had this like wave of anxiety. I was sweating, and
Yeah, it's a crazy feeling. Your very
yeah,
first review in uni.
yeah, it was. It's intense. I think people don't realize how intense it is, and that's something that I think even over 3 years, it takes a while to overcome that kind of anxiety, almost, yeah,
Yeah,
anxiety that
definitely.
you feel. But I did really well on that project, and I got a great mark in the review. Um, so I think had I come from a background that wasn't art and design or whatever, I think I would have
Hmm.
struggled way more than I actually did. Um,
Which
yeah,
which do you remember which building that you had?
yes, it was the House for All Seasons, or House of All Seasons. It was by an architect who I can't remember. I think it was John Lane or someone like that. Fantastic
Just put
linear
you on the spot a
house.
bit there.
Yeah, fantastic linear house with a kind of a brick exterior, and it was for farmers in China. Um, yeah, great building. I remember having to draw the elevation, and it took me. I did it by
Hmm.
hand. It took me like 4 days just to draw this elevation, and my hand was like a claw by the end of it. But
That
yeah,
was that your the brick one, the brick
yeah, it was a big one.
that you drew.
Mm.
Oh yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, I
Every
remember seeing
brick,
that elevation.
by hand, 1 to 50 scale. I think the building was like 40 meters long, so it was, yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. That because that was like actual. You drew the whole thing, didn't you? It's like a massive, massive brick wall.
Yeah, I hated doing it then, but to be honest, I'd kind of like to do it in a weird way. I'd like to do it again now. Like, I feel like I'm so
Yeah.
sick of AutoCAD and stuff. I'd like to, you know, I think it'd be quite nice to have a drawing board and sit there and take
Mm.
my time with something, because it's like such a novelty once you get to part one.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
even though we had a drawing board in our actual student house, that just turned into our ping pong table, which is
that was probably the best use for it at the time.
yeah, yeah, that
You
was
used it a bit, I think. I'll
yeah. I
give you
used
that.
it for I think it was my urban design scheme maybe or something. I'm not even too sure what project it was now, but I was just drawing up grids on it, and then I was cutting up cardboard off the side of it, and it had loads
Did
of
we
uses,
use it
didn't it?
for
Thought
did we use it for beer pong?
yeah, we've literally used that board for pretty much everything, whether it's a social event or a university event. It's come through, and it's the best bit about it is it's still got my dad's initial logo that he wrote about 25
Gosh,
years ago on the board. Just mow and go. Yeah, it's that.
you need to keep that. You need to hang it on your office. You know.
Yeah, it's in my room at home at the minute, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna take it with me wherever I end up.
You never know.
It's
I
crazy.
might sell at auction for quite a lot of money. Who knows? You know.
Yeah, who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, but I think, do you think that living in, say, our student flat with me, you, Josh, and Emily helped at all compared to, say, living with people from different courses?
Oh, definitely, without
Mm.
question. I think being architecture it's a full time thing. It's not just 9 till 5. It's like I absolutely
Lifestyle.
believe, yeah, the best architects, is their lifestyle. You go out on a date, you're in a restaurant, you're not looking across the table, you're looking, oh, look at that beams, look at the columns, look at that detail, kind of thing. And that's the curse of the job. Um, and I think people who embrace that are definitely the ones who are the most successful. Um, and so I
I think
think,
as well a massive benefit
yeah.
was the our deadlines because we all had the exact same deadline, so none of us were going out whenever there was like a
Yeah,
deadline
yeah,
on
yeah.
or
We were all in sync, weren't we?
yeah,
Yeah. But
which I think really benefited us.
I think just being around other architects, and your after work conversations,
Mm.
and you can bounce ideas about your projects together, and yeah, I think in sync is probably the best thing.
Yeah. And
Which,
it was
yeah.
weird as well, like, because we'd all go. I think another benefit was that we'd all go to social events together as well. Like, say, um, me and you went to the DRMM Forest Fabrication, didn't we?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and that was like just mad. And
And
it's
the
weird.
I was gonna say the Grimshaw event we went to as well.
Yeah, Yeah, like sort of going out there with your flatmates who are also sort of training architects as well, who all see the same thing that you do.
Hmm.
Because I can imagine if you took someone from completely different course, they wouldn't have the same feeling. They'd probably get a bit bored after like an hour or
Yeah,
so. You
yeah,
know, I mean, but it's not it's a nice feeling to have, I think. And it also, when you leave the studio and like you think of something, you don't have to wait till the next day. You can just literally like just go in your room and just like, yo, I found this, thought of this, da da da.
yeah, yeah,
Then you'd be like, yeah, don't do
yeah. Yeah, that's when I go in someone else's room.
that.
uh,
Just keep knocking until someone says, yeah, that's a
yeah,
good
until
idea.
someone's been nice to me. Yeah, I think the reason it worked was because we were all quite different, weren't we? I mean, even me and you,
Yeah,
I'd say we're the most similar people, but we have like massive conflict and massive
yeah, because
differences.
yeah, I think we definitely, which is a great thing, isn't it? Because I think we designed quite similar things. Well, no, we designed completely different things even, but the way we thought about the buildings was quite similar sometimes, and then other times it was just like completely different. And it's a hard thing to sort of put a pin on because, say, with our third year project, I remember you were completely nailed on it, and you were like, "Yes, I've done all this, nailed my
Yeah.
project, I've got this." And I was at the very start, I was sort of struggling with the concept side.
Hmm.
But then I remember when you had the model for ages, and you sort of stagnated at that model bit. But then as soon as I found my building, it was like I was where you were at the start, and I was pushing ahead with it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah. I think everyone has their different processes and different, ways of understanding space and form, and we all have different interests.
Mm,
So I think, yeah, I think what was good is that being with different designers meant that when you're encountering a problem with resolution, I think I'm quite good at resolving projects, so I can
mm,
kind of provide you support in that sense. When I'm struggling with concept, I think you're quite conceptual. Yeah, I think you're quite strong in concept,
mm.
so then I could kind of come to you, um, which I think is,
Yeah,
yeah, a
everyone
massive
plays
benefit.
off against each other, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think like
And it's
people like Emily as well, who is
mm,
her priorities in terms of what the focus of architecture should be. So she's very focused on, I would say, the human scale and
yeah,
factors, social factors, and that's something that I've not really um, took the time to understand in great depth. So again, it's great to talk to
mm.
someone who has different priorities.
And Emily, for those who don't know, was our other flatmate as well as Josh. And yeah, I mean, we had a great time in Kensington in Liverpool.
Not the nice
Um,
Kensington.
and it was really good, like because we'd all go into uni at the same time, we'd all finish roughly around the same time, wouldn't we? And
Yeah,
then, I mean, even down to things like say going climbing and whatnot, taking
yeah,
up hobbies with other people that you live with is
yeah.
also a massive sort of miniature bonding experience, really, isn't it? Because you get out in the fresh air, you get to talk about your project,
Hmm.
and it gives you a completely different angle on the project, isn't it? Especially if you're struggling with something.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
was like when me and you joined like the LAS, for example, that was really good for us because we got a chance to see other architects in Liverpool, didn't we?
Yeah, the Liverpool Architectural Society was, it was absolutely. I definitely recommend,
Mm.
if you're a student, get involved with your local societies, your local groups, just because I think it was just really interesting, to talk to other
Yeah,
architects, and the other benefit was that we could go out and get absolutely hammered for free because we'd just be
yeah,
like piggybacking off these events, which was just great. I don't know why we didn't
yeah.
figure that out earlier. But yeah, talking to
And
other
it's great as a
architects.
student, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um,
That's definitely one of the biggest thing is talk to other architects and get to know people in your area who are sort of a more advanced version of you of where you see yourself in a way,
mhm.
because they can give you sort of great sort of footholds into how to tackle problems and just get to know them as a person because at the end of the day it's a great opportunity for students.
Yeah, yeah. I think this comes to this whole networking thing of essentially networking is having a good impression on people,
Hmm.
making bonds with people which are not just superficial, but actual like, oh, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I can
Hmm.
help you, or and vice versa. And I think certainly what the two of us are starting to see now is that putting the time into those events and networking and just talking to people has started to open up doors,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
which I can foresee going further on into our careers, um,
Yeah.
which is
And
just
I mean, off
fantastic.
the back of the LAS, you've done your own competition, haven't you, Sam?
Yeah. So after I left university, I struggled to find a job with the pandemic and lockdown, and just practice being quite cautious about taking people on. And suddenly I was thinking, it would be nice to have something architectural to do, and it would be nice to help other people in my situation. So I
Hmm.
kind of came up with this concept of having a free to enter design competition, where students encourage students to enter. They can get experience on their CVs, something to talk about at interviews. They have an extra project in their portfolio, and overall, it was just the idea was is just how can I help people in the most pragmatic way possible. And yeah, I'm really glad to
Hmm.
have run that project. Um, and yeah, hopefully, I think a
Is
lot of
that
people will
still
benefit.
available to enter?
No, actually, so the deadline is in what's that? 10 hours. Yeah, so
10 hours time?
10 hours time. Not sure when
Yeah.
this is going
How
out, but
many people have you got?
so
How many people
far
have you got so far that have entered it?
we've had 105 people register. Um, I was
Oh, that's
certainly
good.
hoping for a lot more, but I think we've got more than 100, and I think that's really successful. Um,
Hmm.
Mainly in the Liverpool region, so Liverpool University and Liverpool John Moores. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've had a brief look at the entries, and there are some really interesting ideas. I One of the benefits for me is that I'm being exposed to ideas which I wouldn't necessarily have on my own. I'm looking at thinking, wow, that's amazing. I would never
Yeah.
have thought of that. So a learning curve for me, a learning curve for first years doing their first competition. So
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, you must be seeing some crazy concepts of things that, say, for example, it's to do a statue or something. You're probably seeing a crazy concept of a statue that's a full blown city or something within a statue. And there's
yeah,
probably all these new ideas that are coming through, which,
yeah,
it can only assist everyone involved, really, can't it?
yeah. It's kind of it reminds me of this is going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I watched this video of a guy who made a fusion reactor in his bedroom. He
Right.
literally like built it and stuff. Bear with me. And the way he did it was through open source. And it's this idea
Right.
of you talk to someone who knows a bit about fusion reaction, you know a bit about it, and you share knowledge. And by sharing knowledge,
Okay.
and then so open source, the concept is that everyone gives their information for free, and in return get
Mm.
information, and through that everyone develops
So
and
profits
grows.
and benefits of it.
Yeah, and so certainly I guess with this competition is that it does certainly for me, and what I hope to do is kind of publicize the entries that we've had is kind of open source our idea
Mm.
of look at what this person has done, see their thought process, what has your thought
Yeah.
process been, and sharing those ideas to kind of elevate.
Do you think you'd like to do some more competitions in the future to run them?
Just the time. um, yeah, I mean, it's when I got into it, I was unemployed. Now I am employed. Um, so that was a bit different. I was like, okay, I need to spend my evenings working on this.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to. I think I'd like to enter more competitions,
Mm.
and I'd like to. Yeah, it'd be nice to run some more competitions. I think what's important is that the competitions have a purpose. They are answering a question. The one currently is questioning what will our cities be like after the pandemic has ended. What could
Mm.
the
Oh yeah.
pavilion do to offer something which we're currently lacking at the moment? So yeah, if I was to run one in the future, it would probably do something or invoke students to question the environment or current contemporary issues that we face in architecture today.
Yeah. I mean that sounds really good. That sort of because it's making students think as well that
Mm.
there is external things going on outside of just being in the closed off studio sort of thing, isn't it? And
Yeah,
it's making them more sort of conscious of current events that are going on in the world and how architecture fits within those current events in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, as practitioners, we are both artists and engineers.
Hmm.
We are very pragmatic in that we shelter people from the rain storms. We provide people with a safe place to live their lives, but also we have the chance to comment on politics, social issues, all
Yeah.
sorts. And so I think we need to, as a student body, as a practice, as a community, we need to engage with both being able to provide for people, but also be able to use that artistic ability that we all have.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think it's it is interesting in that aspect that we do have the sort of a platform in a way to comment on these current events, isn't it? And whether your platform will be a competition or a podcast or
Hmm.
say even like YouTube videos or a LinkedIn post, whatever it is, it's nice to see that there's a sort of umbrella of architectures in there that is ongoing and current at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we're architects. We're stubborn, but we're informed. We have our ideas, and importantly, I think a lot of us are open to new ideas. And so I think we are uniquely educated in that we're taught how to observe the world and
Hmm.
understand what's happening in the world, and then form our own ideas. And that's what architecture is, isn't it?
Hmm. So then, say Samuel Kumar as a student,
Hmm.
when do you think everyone talks about sort of a penny drop moment
Hmm.
where they become and think about all the things that you've just mentioned then? When do you think your time was in university where that penny's dropped and you thought, oh my God, this is so much more than just drawing a few lines and making a building? Or are
Uh,
you yet to experience that moment?
well, I'm not too sure. I'd say, on the one hand, I'd say it was first year. I think first year was the hardest year for me, and
Mm,
that's kind of when I had some really great tutors, and they really helped to grow my understanding of architecture. Is not just a building, but it there's a whole other world behind it. But then
yeah.
I would still say that I still lack a knowledge and an understanding and a depth. I'm not even halfway through my architectural education. I was listening to a lecture last night by David Chipperfield, which was recorded in, I think it was 1987. So this is when the guy was,
Wow.
Chipperfield was still an early practice. They were doing
Yeah.
shop fronts and perfume bottles and things like that. And listening to what he was saying, I mean, granted, I think he was at the time, he was like 35. So in my eyes, he's quite old, but in terms of architecture, I guess he's a young architect. I don't know, but his
Yeah.
understanding then was just so far beyond what I knew, and the way he talked about form and details and his
Mm.
reasoning, I kind of realized like I don't know anything, I don't know shit. Um, so that was quite nice to have,
Yeah, I think it's
quite
definitely
eye opening. Yeah,
if I think if you don't have them moments in life, then I think you're definitely doing it wrong.
yeah,
Because I think
yeah.
if you're sort of playing in the comfort zone and you're not making that leap to fail,
Hmm.
then you're never really going to succeed off the back of that, are you?
If you think you know everything, you probably don't know anything.
Yeah, you're in the wrong room, aren't you?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, kind of back to the question. Like, I think first year, having my tutor talk to me about symbolism in architecture and meaning and
Mm.
just simple things like having a tall space for having a short space. How do you feel in this way? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like something is
Yeah.
greater than you? Um, Certainly, it was then when I kind of got this idea of, okay, architecture is not just plain art elements, wall, roof,
Mm.
fancy glass, whatever. There's more going on. When was it for
Yeah, I
you?
think it.
When did your penny drop?
Oof, I think probably I would say mine was quite later. I'd say mine was probably when I'd say I did a little bit of it. I think it was starting to drop around second year, about halfway through second year, just after urban design, and we started doing the. I think it was the second concept project that we did, but then I think it finally dropped in third year. I think when we had to go home
Hmm.
and we were like working from home, and it was all very much independent working space. I think the full penny drop of wow, this is architecture is a full picture I'd say it probably happened during that sort of lockdown era.
Yeah.
And then probably I'd add to that, I'd say it happened in a sort of added layer to that would be my experience in a part one.
Hmm.
Because I mean, the gap from third year to part one is sort of monumental.
Hmm.
And I think walking into practice the way I did with my concept portfolio, like, oh, look, I can do this, did this, did a bit of work in the surveys at the time. And when you, I think after the back of that interview, you feel like, oh, yeah, so I've secured this job, I'm in here pretty much, I've got a job. They like my portfolio, and I'll just be carrying on work like I've done.
Hmm.
And then you actually sit down and you do work, and then a whole other picture comes from the trees, and like you really see the expanse of architectural consultants, everyone who liaises with an architect to create a building. And it's kind of like you go from student architect, and then it zooms out and you see everyone else in the architectural sort of umbrella, as I keep saying.
Hmm.
But I think it is a consistent learning path, isn't it? It's a one massive learning curve that just continually goes up.
Absolutely. I think it's there is so much to learn. There's so much to learn. I don't think you would ever stop learning. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's amazing. You know how many practitioners can say that in their industry, that there is that much quantity to learn, and what you choose to focus on can be what you are passionate about. That's
Yeah,
something really
definitely.
amazing. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I know you're quite interested in timber, um,
Hmm.
and kind of learning and exploring that further.
Yeah, it is interesting because you can see it as um say you look at it and you see all these community of architecture where you have the architect sort of drawing it, and then everyone else sort of is around that sort of sphere, but
Hmm.
they all contribute the same to make the same building.
Hmm.
But then I think you can also dive deeper into your own role, and you can see something you like. Say, if you like concrete, for example, you could create a new form of sustainable concrete, or you could make a new form of bricks or something. There's so many independent avenues within architecture
Hmm.
that you don't necessarily have to fit into one of them. You can be multidisciplinary and fit into hundreds if you want. But I think
Yeah.
that's the great thing about architecture is it's not a one size fits all.
Oh no, no,
I mean, if
certainly
you look
not.
at Virgil Abloh, he started off as I think, is he an architect, a fully qualified architect, or
He
he's
did.
definitely done his masters, hasn't he?
He did. I think he did his undergraduate as an engineer, and then I think he did a master's degree in architecture.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at where he started compared to where he's ended up now, that's a massive sort of transformation. And I think he's at RCA, isn't he?
Yeah. So
So
yeah. So he's a guest tutor at the RCA now, which is exciting for me as someone who has got a place at the RCA starting September. So fingers crossed.
can you bring me
Virgil.
back a signed pair of shoes or something?
No, I'm
Is
keeping
that
them for
doable?
myself. Sell them on eBay. Yeah, so that's really, and also Christian Dior. Christian Dior was an
Mm,
architect. He went on to do fashion.
yeah,
Maybe
I
I should
mean,
start
it's
doing
so
fashion.
transferable, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think um, what I definitely think what we learned in the 3 years of undergraduate architecture is how to design,
Yeah,
and whether that be architecture or fashion or graphic design or product design, furniture. I feel like it's just what they train you to do is understand. Okay, what are you trying to achieve? How do you want people to feel?
mm,
What materials are there? What you know processes are there to make people feel that way? And then how do you deliver that end result? Um,
mm,
and so the skills definitely that we learn are just incredibly transferable and can be applied to
yeah,
anything and
definitely.
everything. Yeah. Um,
Do you do you think so? You're on your part one now. Do you think
mhm.
that going back to RCA,
Or going
are
to
you
RCA.
nervous for that? How are you feeling for that?
I Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'd be really nice to go to a school of architecture that is much more experimental and much more
Mm,
forward thinking, and is
yeah,
less compare. I mean, my undergraduate was very much about designing buildings, um, which was really I had a great education there at Liverpool John Moores. But I think the balance that I'll get from RCA, learning about architecture as a wider intellectual kind of theory, will be really
Hmm.
interesting. I'm quite I don't know. I'm quite nervous to go. Actually, I think
Which is good.
yeah, I think I'll really be challenged. And quite honestly, I think I'll probably find the first year difficult because it'll be a new way of thinking, and I'll be with
Yeah.
new people, and my drives and what's pushing me and what my peers are doing will be very different.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm a bit nervous, but in a good way. I know I'll grow,
I think,
I
yeah.
hope to grow. Yeah,
Do you feel like you'll learn a lot from the sort of environment that you'll be sitting in with the people who are on the same course as you?
absolutely. I think talking to people from other universities, it's quite apparent that different universities and different architecture courses, different tutors have a very different architecture that they teach to their students.
Hmm.
So I think what's great about RCA, as it's only a postgraduate school, is that all the people, all my peers in RCA will all come from very different schools of architecture, and all have a very different idea of what architecture is, and have different projects. And I think definitely
That is
from
very
my
true.
from my interview as well, I kind of realized that the academics teaching have a very different mindset. So yeah, I think the ideas that we all generate together will push me to do different things. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah, I think that'll be good though, because I think it will push you out of your comfort zone, won't it?
yeah, I think that's what we all need to do something. You know, to
Yeah.
be pushed by someone to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Do you
I was
think your part one at Scott Brownrigg will benefit you in going into your masters? Do you think you've learned a lot from Scott Brownrigg at the moment?
I've learned a lot about. I think they're just the realities of architecture. Um, I think I've been really fortunate to go to a really creative, heavy kind of design based practice.
Hmm.
Um, you know we have some great clients, and we're fortunate to have big budgets, and we can do really interesting things.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot about reality and the way actual practice is, and I think that has definitely shaped my understanding of architecture, and I think that will change me um, when I go to my masters. I think one of the things I'll be grateful for is to have time to spend on a project and not be like, yeah, that's yeah, not be okay. You've got 24 hours. Give me a concept kind of thing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be quite nice to spend some time getting to know a
You'll
subject.
be there with these slippers on the table, like chilling out. Louis
Well,
Vuitton
yeah,
slippers.
yeah, in my armchair, kind of mulling things over, just sit next to a
Yeah.
fireplace and just think. That would be nice. Yeah, I look forward to that. Though I say that, I imagine I'll get there and it'll just be like crazy.
Yeah, it'll be even worse. It'll be like, yeah, you've got 2 hours to design a full concept, pin it up, and crack on.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of research. From what I understand, there's a lot of research involved at RCA, which would be quite
Hmm.
nice to yeah to spend some time really to get to know a topic and understand, because I think that's one of the things I didn't do in BA was that my projects didn't really have like a critical stance. They didn't try to answer issues. They were just kind of
Hmm.
buildings that had certain spaces. So yeah, that's one of the things I would like to look at. What about you? What sort of things would you like to do in your masters? I mean, are there topics and issues you'd like to look at, or is it much more about structure and buildings?
So yeah, I used to love structure, as you previously know from my Assemble City stuff. But it's like I think I was very sort of diving into the components on that, and that was the sort of architecture that I really fell in love with. It was how things fit together, and I think that's kind of what led me on to this sort of timber construction methods and timber buildings was just the pure aesthetic of how they fit together and how incredible you can make them. Like if you look at stuff from Hook Park now, the way they can pick certain trees out from a forest and sort of put them into a massive machine that'll then cut them in certain ways to build a truss or something. It's phenomenal. I think I'd definitely like to dive more back into that sort of structure and sort of potentially look at really developing my knowledge in timber
Hmm.
and looking at how it all fits together. I think that's what I like the most is how understanding how things fit together,
Yeah.
and that's probably what I like to learn. I've got a sort of digressing a bit, but do you have any sort of what made you pick RCA? Do you think you've got any? Say, if I was a master's student now or
Hmm.
a part one student now going into my masters, do you have any sort of tips that you could give me to potentially look at a good masters?
I think well, there's a number of factors really. I think for me, one of the reasons for choosing RCA was that I wanted a school that would offer me something different from
Hmm.
what I'd learned in the undergrad. I wanted to grow and not focus on one area of the subject, but kind of move. So my thinking was is that I would come out as someone who had an understanding of two different bits of the subject, and which would go well together. Um,
Hmm.
so as someone who came from a very pragmatic school of architecture, I wanted to go to somewhere experimental. So I looked at places such as Bartlett, RCA, Westminster, St Martin's, Bath, all really good schools of architecture, but schools that perhaps pushed things in a different way or encouraged a certain way of thinking. Um, but
Yeah.
likewise, I in the opposite, I'd encourage someone who perhaps went to a more experimental school of architecture to maybe think about going to a much more
Go
pragmatic
the other
school.
way.
Yeah, because that way
Hmm.
perhaps you'll end up with a balance where you have an understanding of theory
Yeah.
but an understanding of reality, which I think would be really good.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense, to be honest. I mean, because you get both sides of the coin, then, don't you? And you don't just come away with two coins that have no face on the other side. It's just one coin in a way. It's a bit of a rubbish analogy there.
I don't know what you were trying to say there. I mean, okay, yeah, if
No,
it's
I mean, it doing pragmatic and conceptual working together, I think, gives you a great foundation for the next steps, isn't it? Because you're mastering two elements, which will form a complete sort of
yeah,
architect, if you
yeah.
like.
I say this
Um,
as I mean, are we neither of us have gone to our masters yet, so perhaps we'll have a different
yeah, we're,
conversation at
we're
the
we're
end of
saying
it.
this, but
Yeah, you never know. We might get to RCA and think, oh, well, I've just learned the exact same thing. But I doubt it. But yeah, I'm
yeah, I mean,
looking forward to it, learning new stuff. I think definitely.
do you think you're, say, when you're looking for your part one,
Hmm.
what sort of influenced you to pick sort of Scott Brownrigg? Did you sort of aspire to pick a big practice, would you say?
Um, so certainly at the start of my undergraduate, I was looking for. I wanted a large practice doing large projects. I wanted to be doing tall building. I want to get paid loads, all this kind of stuff. And then as I went through the years, I kind of like that became less important to me. Um,
Yeah.
what I wanted to do was work for someone who was doing interesting projects and who were working on interesting things. Um,
Mm.
and so when I'm kind of looking for a job, my focus was I don't care if you're massive or small, paying loads, paying a little. I wanted somewhere where I would enjoy the work that they were doing, and I guess fundamentally, I wanted to work for someone who I believed in their work. Um,
Yeah.
which yeah, but that was quite important to me, definitely. Um, what I liked about Scott Brownrigg is that they ticked a lot of those boxes. They're a RIBA practice role model. They are quite
Mm.
heavily focused on sustainability and delivering environmentally and socially sustainable buildings. But also, they
Mm.
were not limited by that. They were pushing designs. They were working with timber. Um, and so, yeah, I guess I wanted to work from them because they
Yeah.
seemed genuine. Yeah.
So I guess in one way, instead of say them designing a building to meet the spec and to like
Mhm.
limit everything to meet the spec, they're instead going the other way and they're really pushing the boundaries of the spec, sort of creating new forms of buildings that still meet the same specification required,
Mhm.
but really, really pushing new concepts and new interesting design.
Yeah, I think well, I think we're privileged to have great clients and great
Mm.
budgets. which allows us to kind of have the opportunity to push things, which is always good. But yeah, I think there is a mindset definitely of we want to deliver the best project possible. We want it to be the
Mm.
best in terms of the social and the structure and the environment. And so there's definitely a mindset. What's the best way we can do this? It's not about the easiest or the best looking. It's the most appropriate way.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, in that sense, I think there's probably a Scott Brownrigg mindset of
Yeah, and I think that mindset will stick with you for the rest of your life, won't it?
yeah. Well, I hope so. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about buildings and putting buildings together and working with
Mm.
clients and I guess delivering a intellectual mandate for your projects.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, what
It's
about you?
so it,
What do you? What kind of have you learned from your part one?
I think I've learned a lot that architecture is definitely a community sort of driven ideal. I don't even know what the word is, but it's definitely more. I think if you go into university now thinking that you've got one guy at the sort of top of the tree who's just the architect scribbling away and passes it down, I think I've been very fortunate to see that it's not like that. I've been put in a really, really good practice where at SDA it's like, I get an input on all the designs. I get to, like, I was doing detailing the other day for a CLT glue lamp structure, and it's little things like that that obviously people in university think, oh, I'm a part one, I'll just be doing door schedules and whatnot. But I've been really gifted to actually get the opportunity to be on these big designs, and then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like liaising with glue lamp specialists, for example, on will this detail work, and just been really fortunate really to sort of create new details and new types of design that you would really rarely see in sort of the timber architecture field. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think one thing I've definitely taken away from a sort of part one position is that architecture is more than just the architect. And I think that's a quite good saying in terms of it's everyone that's involved, not just the architect.
Yeah. That was definitely new to me as well. Sitting in these consultant meetings and there's like
Mm.
30 of you, and there's people talking about trees, and they're like, well, you can't cut these trees down. These trees they've been there hundreds of years. How dare you? And people
Not the
talking about
TPO trees.
drainage. I sat in meetings where people have talked about drainage for like 2 hours, and I swear to God, I just yeah, those can be kind of difficult. But yeah, it's true. Putting together buildings and projects and large schemes, there's a lot of people involved and a lot of mindsets and a lot of
Yeah,
specialties. And
I love a lot of people.
I think the architect needs to have an understanding and an appreciation as well for
Mm.
the other subjects involved, because we're not.
Yeah, and you need to at least have some basic understanding of what you're looking at. Because if you've got a drainage consultant saying, "Oh, we need to put these clay dams in here," we
Mhm.
need to do all this, we need to relocate all these fish. You need to have at least some understanding of the principles of how it all fits together. Otherwise, it's just going to go straight over your head, and the building might be lopsided because of you know, they put the dams in the wrong place. Like you don't know, do you? But
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something that's missing from um, undergraduate architecture.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
was yeah, taking the time to teach students about okay, these are drawings that an engineer will produce. This is what a
Mm.
cut and fill is. Get to understand what that means. Yeah, that because that
Yeah,
all that stuff is new when you go into a part one.
yeah, and you're like, oh my god, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
When you
Uh,
first experience it, it's mind blowing.
and
But
you're looking at drawings and like 200-page reports about like whatever sustainable urban drainage, and you're looking at like what is this? But yeah,
literally,
I think that was the
um,
biggest learning curve for me, seeing
yeah,
other industries involved and understanding what
mm.
they're doing.
And it's I definitely agree back to your previous point that it's definitely missing from university at the minute. I think I've seen a LinkedIn post recently that someone was sort of asking for this realistic, maybe like a 6 month course or something where you prep your project, you go on site, you speak to consultants, whether it's a live project or whatnot, and just so it gives you sort of crash course, like a part one crash course before you actually go straight into a university.
Hmm.
But on the other side of that, every architecture practice is run differently. So I don't think there's
Yeah,
like a one size fits all, like, oh, this is what this looks like. This is what a quotation form looks like. This is what a quotation form does. These are the consultants you might be working with. It's like you might go to, say, I'm pretty sure that STA is run differently from Scott Brownrigg. So
probably.
like just because inside the
Yeah,
pure
there's such
scale of
different
Scott
sizes. Yeah,
Brownrigg.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, it would be extremely difficult to put in like a 6 month course, wouldn't it? I feel.
Yeah, knowledge is never a bad thing, is it? But
Hmm.
definitely, I think this kind of relates to this idea of the oven ready student and leaving
Oh
university.
yeah,
That
yeah.
student
That's
who
a
leaves university who's like perfect, like streamlined samurai warrior who can just go into practice and like tear shit up. Uh,
and just run the practice.
yeah,
Everyone else can go home.
it's a great concept, but the reality is that every practice is different, and people have different systems,
Yeah.
different software, different ways of working, different ideas about what the part one should be doing.
Hmm.
And so it's hard to be an oven ready student because, well, say for example, say like Revit. Okay, uh, I am a student. I want to be, great for when I go into practice. I'm going to learn Revit. I'm going to smash out Revit. I'm going to get grips with
Hmm.
it. So when I get there, I can actually be useful in doing stuff. But say your practice, I don't think you use Revit, do you?
Yeah, we do SketchUp and AutoCAD.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
So it's like Revit isn't even used. So if
yeah,
you spend all your
exactly.
time training up for Revit,
But like with me, for example, an oven ready student might go, well, I'm not going to learn parametric architecture. I'm not going to learn parametricism. I'm not going to learn
hmm,
Grasshopper. Um, but then, say in my practice, it was on my second day. Someone was like, "Do you know Grasshopper? We need you to do this."
yeah,
But
literally,
that might not be used in your practice. So this idea of the oven ready
it is
student, I think
crazy.
it's an unrealistic idea. We
Hmm.
are,
There's
yeah.
no such thing, I don't believe, unless you've literally mastered every single program software in your 3 years, and you've sort of ascertained this incredible portfolio, you know, and you've got lists of consultants that you spoke to every single day throughout your 3 years. You understand everything about everything. Then it's not attainable at all, is it?
I think the one thing that students could have, which they could have universally, if that's a word, is that a word universally? I think so.
Universally, yeah.
Universally,
I think so. If we're both wrong,
I don't
then
know.
we're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Um, one thing that all architecture students could have across the board
Yeah,
is just to be good designers and competent designers, so that
yeah,
when we go into practice, and the best way a practice can take advantage of a part one is let us do concept design, because I think a lot of us are good concept designers and we can come up with ideas quickly. And I think that's one thing across
yeah,
the board that all students could could do. I mean, certainly in my practice, but my the primary use of the part one is, okay, you're part one, you've come from 3 years of concept design and thinking about
mm,
ideas. We're going to use you to come up with ideas. um, and so
yeah.
I've been really fortunate to have that experience, and that's something I think that should be shared across the board.
I think that is definitely becoming a point now, isn't it? That we are like concept driven at our stage. Because don't get me wrong, we have a gist to technical how it all works. We probably had like what 4 lectures on it or something in university. We did a few technical details and all that
Hmm.
sort of stuff, but
Hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, we're not ready purely for technical, are we? And we're not ready for doing what I'm trying to say is we're perfect for concept stuff because that's pretty much all we've been doing for a solid 3 years. And I think that is starting to become the case throughout many practices where part ones do generally do some concept work.
Hmm.
And it's like you were saying, where you've got a good concept and then maybe a director takes it forward or someone else takes it forward.
Hmm.
But the initial seed is sort of crafted with the help of the part one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're designers, and we're
Hmm.
trained for 3 years to be designers, but we're also trained, well, certainly in the school that me and you went to, it was, okay, you can come up with ideas. Okay, think about how those ideas are actually going to be real. And I think
Hmm.
that has certainly put me in you, put us in fortunate positions in practice, in that if we are utilized, I think we're useful tools. Um,
Yeah, in the right place.
yeah, I think going back to what you said about like what we could learn which would make us more suitable for practice. I think
Hmm.
certainly I feel as though, and going off this whole concept design thing, I feel as though if there were workshops, for example, where it was okay, you've
Yeah.
got 24, 48, 72 hours to come up with a concept
Mm.
and then present that, I think those would be really useful
Yeah.
um because
Yeah, it's
the
like our 1 day competition we did
yeah what
in
was it?
university. That was a really good day. That
It was urban
it's
design, wasn't it?
redesign. Yeah, redesign a shopping center or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we
We-
were absolutely terrible at it.
yeah, we came in last. The first years beat us.
That was the best bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was terrible. I thought we had a
That
good
was crazy
team.
that day though, because you could definitely see all the changes from what a first year sees to what a master student sees to what a third year sees, and it was like, whoa, there's so many different types of design in this room.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that was a really fun day. But I think it was really useful because it was like quick
Hmm.
fire, like come up with an idea fast. What's our grand idea? I think that's where we
Yeah.
went wrong. We didn't have an overarching concept, did we? We
No, because
did like
it
three
was
little
so
bits.
yeah, because it was literally it's me, Sam, and Ryan, and we each split up a section of the map, didn't we?
Yeah.
To the the urban design scheme. Like, oh, we'll do this over here, we'll do this over here, but the only thing that really connected all three of them was like that glass colonnade, wasn't it? That we put in.
No, because that was only over your bit. It didn't go over my bit.
Oh.
That's why we lost.
See, you can tell why we lost. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was just crazy day. And then the master student that came on, and it was like where they found this amazing concept from Thatcher or something, or like a cross grid, wasn't it?
It,
Like
it
on a
was from
shoe or
the
something.
it was from the what was imported because the site was near a port, wasn't it? So it was about
Hmm.
it was looking back and seeing what was imported into the area previously, and it was using those textures and those substances and creating an overarching idea based off the
Yeah,
history
like
of the
that
site.
sort of stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
That concept. Then that went on to RIBA North, didn't it? That then got presented at RIBA North, didn't it? The three winning categories.
Oh yeah, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so I think practice was doing it as well. So I think this was an actual genuine competition that was.
Yeah, it might have actually been a competition that
Yeah,
we just
we just
just
kind
sort
of
of flaked on.
yeah. Our careers could have been very different, couldn't they? Yeah, no. So they were just yeah. That went to RIBA North, and then they presented those ideas, and the students went down and met with practice. That actually,
Hmm.
fun fact, that was a year ago yesterday.
Was it?
Exactly 1 year ago yesterday. That was yeah, because I had to go to a wedding, so I missed out on I had to go to a wedding, so I missed our review, which was a year ago yesterday.
Bloody hell.
That's weird, isn't it?
It's crazy.
But yeah,
And then,
yeah. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, yeah, I think just having workshops where where students are encouraged to come up with whole ideas within 24, 48, 72 hours, because the reality of
mm,
practice is that there are deadlines, and there are time constraints, and you have to do things quite quickly and show them to people
yeah,
quick.
definitely.
Um, yeah, I definitely would have liked to have done more of those workshops.
And I think as well, another beneficial one could have been sort of taking a third year and putting them in practice for a day.
I think a week. I don't think you learn
Yeah,
much in a day.
a day, yeah, you'd probably just be doing like some admin forms or something for a day, but
Yeah,
maybe a week or 2 weeks, maybe. 2 weeks, like built in work experience, I think could be really useful.
yeah,
But even then, well, I mean, I guess that's the point in the part one, isn't it? But we're sort of talking about a pre-part one, like a gap
hmm
between the two, or
hmm
a bridge between the two, even.
yeah. I mean, I know that certain practices will kind of pair with universities. I know that
Hmm.
that's a thing that happens. So I think it's definitely something that could be feasible.
Hmm. Right then, I think that is probably going to cut it there because it's getting on to an hour.
You talk too much.
But yeah, thank you everyone for joining me and Sam on this episode 2 of the Full Circle podcast. We'll probably be catching up with you again. I don't know. I'm sure Sam will be coming on a later video at some point in his busy career that he's got at the minute.
I'll
But
have to book you.
yeah, I'll have to speak to his PA first, and then we can go from there. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me, Sam. And
Thank you for having me.
I'll see you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Bye bye.